Hey, Celtics Postgame on the Garden Report. Just me and Josue Pavon tonight. John and Jimmy banged in on a Pistons game. Who
Of
knows if they'll be
course.
back for the Orlando game as well. I mean, it's
Of
easy.
course, Jimmy. Of course,
I
Jimmy
know
banged
you
out
were
on a
thinking
Friday
about it
night.
too, Josue. I was almost here alone talking about Sadiq Bey and Jeremy Grant for an hour. People would have loved
Nah,
that.
nah. My off day is Sunday. Off day is Sunday. I'm good for tonight.
All right, I'm going in on both these games. Unfortunately, this was as dreadful of a game as it possibly could have been. Cade Cunningham ruled out at the last second. Didn't get to see him, which was sad. Jeremy Grant didn't look like himself, still coming back from the injury there. Kelly Olynyk, really limited, still coming back from his injury. So the Pistons just had a horrific second quarter where I think they scored 15 points. Third quarter, Tatum lights them up, and that was essentially the ball game there. Celtics led by as many as 22, I believe it was, in that fourth quarter. The bench comes in, almost blows it, gets to within 7 in that last minute there, and much bigger blowout than the final score indicates, 102-93. I'm Bobby Manning. We'll have Sherrod Blakely joining us from Detroit at some point tonight, and Josue is here for now. So, Josue, we'll spend a few minutes on this game. A lot of stuff happening around the NBA. Big trade today. Report, another heavy.com report. They're just churning out breaking rumors ahead of the deadline. And more Ben Simmons talk. We're going to do a ton of Ben Simmons talk tonight. That'll get the people going.
Oh
But
yeah,
first, Celtics
great
Pistons.
tease.
Where do you want to
Good
start with
job.
this one?
I mean, I guess let's just start from the beginning. I guess. I mean, look, the Celtics came out again with the same sort of attitude, same approach. They look like a system. You know what I mean? Like how I feel like a month ago or 3 weeks ago we would be saying, oh, well, this person looked great or that guy looked great in the starting lineup. No, the whole system is looking fluid right now, and that's exactly what you want to see, especially against a bottom feeding team like the Detroit Pistons. Now, exactly like you said, I mean, Jeremy Grant isn't himself. You got guys out of the lineup, so you take advantage. This is supposed to be a blowout win, and that's exactly what it was. Outside, I mean, besides the second unit nearly blowing it at the end there, nearly getting the starters back in there, which would have been a little embarrassing. But that luckily that didn't happen. Jason Tatum had a lot to do with that in that third quarter. I thought he did a good job of shaking off the rust a bit from the first half. He got it going from the outside, but yeah, Bobby, I just feel like the offense is clicking right now. Everyone's trusting each other. I mean, shit, we had Robert Williams pass up a dunk so he can give out a 3 to Romeo Langford. Now, granted, the game was way out of reach at this point, but that's the kind of approach I want to see, making the great pass and looking for the open guys. You know what I mean? He may have forced it a bit. That does go against my whole, I want to see Rob be more aggressive when he got the rim right in front of him. But it does show, again, what Ime's system is all about. And I think we were starting to completely see that unfold, and we're seeing that consistency in their approach for sure.
5 more blocks from Rob in this one, too. The post defense that the Celtics are playing right now is outstanding.
Incredible.
I wrote that for CLNS after the last game. This is the best defense in the league right now by far. And I know it's the Pistons, but they've been doing this to other groups too. NBC had a great stat during this game that 10 teams now have held their opponents to under 33% in a game, and the Celtics have 3 of those. I forget what the other 2 were, but add this one to the list. I believe the Pistons shot 32.7. There it is, right in the graphic, percent from the field. So they're crowding the paint. They have this really good thing going with Rob and Al Horford being like a 2-headed monster in the paint there, completely deterring shots at the rim. And then in that second quarter, Pistons took like 9 shots at the rim and only got 1 to go. And that was essentially where they completely faded out of this game. The Celtics defense is really starting to become something special here. And like you said, Josue, we'll get into Tatum's game as well. Sherrod is here from these arena names always.
Little Caesars Arena.
Little Caesars. Oh my God!
You got to do the announcer voice when you're talking about Detroit, man. I thought you were gonna.
Well, you can't do Mason. Don't do it. You can't do Mason. I know Mason, and Mason has a distinct voice. And Bobby, no disrespect, but you ain't built for that.
I actually remember that now that I think of it. Just had to jog my memory there.
Did he take the season off this year, or he's still doing that?
Mace? Oh, he's still here. He's still doing his job. He's excellent at his job.
The Pistons?
No, I know.
Not so much.
Man, Detroit's not doing their part. They gotta get it going. You got a hype man like that. You gotta take advantage of that.
So Sherrod,
bad team.
we were just talking defense.
Mhm.
I love talking defense with this team at this point because it's actually the only thing that the Celtics do exceptional. But I'll hand some credit to the Pistons too. That second quarter might have been the worst offensive quarter I've seen from a team in the NBA this year.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was bad. I mean, the only quarter that I can think of a team was as bad that I've seen the Celtics play this year was, if you think back to that first Miami Heat game where the Celtics outscored them
Oh, they
33
had
to
a
9.
9-point quarter.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was
that's
30,
9
right.
30,
points.
33
Yeah,
to
that's
9.
right.
33 to 9 was the score in that one. That was like probably the worst quarter of basketball I've seen a team play against the Celtics this year. But this was pretty damn close. Detroit's, they're just a bad team. But the thing that I appreciate about the Celtics is that they didn't allow the craptitude that was on the floor against them suck them in and play at that level. They consistently
Yeah.
stayed above the fray. They did what they're supposed to do. When Detroit was trying to attack the rim, they did a great job of making sure they wouldn't get anything close. Detroit wasn't shooting the ball particularly well from the perimeter. The Celtics did what you're supposed to do against a team that is closer to the number one pick than being the number one seed in the East. And that is absolutely annihilate them. And to your point, Bobby, you're right. I mean, the final score was not indicative of how this game was played. It wasn't the second unit. It was, to me, it was the 2+ unit. The guys that were beyond just the typical backups that just almost let this thing get away. And that was, at some, you get the feeling that if there was another minute or two on the clock, we might be having a different kind of conversation about this game.
Oh man.
And and again, Detroit wasn't doing anything special. It was just that the Celtics, they were just kind of crapping a bed there at the end. You can't have that happen. You really can't. Even if you are on that 2+ second unit, not the backups, but the guys beyond the backups.
Yeah, I was telling
Yeah.
Bobby, that would have been embarrassing if you had the stars come back in, man. That would have been that.
It was a mini
That's when you get
walk
the
of
stare
shame.
down. Yeah,
I
that's
think
when you walk.
I think Bruno and
when,
Ennis went to the bench.
when you check back in and you give them the stare down, that that almost happened.
I think that was Detroit last year. Maybe I'm wrong that sent the starters back into the game in another game. I think when Stevens was coach last year. Another weird Stevens moment, you talk about Little Caesars, Sherrod. I think it was like a Grandy interview with Brad last year. And Brad was like, oh, I love Little Caesars. That's my favorite pizza. And I was like, what?
It's
really
it's not as bad as people think it is. I mean, it's
favorite pizza.
Now, I wouldn't go so far as to put it. I wouldn't put it on like
when he
my,
was growing up, though. Yeah.
Yes, when he was growing up.
I wouldn't say Little Caesars gets like the gold medal if you're having pizza competition Olympics or something like that. But it's not bad. I mean, you could do worse.
Yeah.
You could do a lot worse. A lot worse.
Yeah, and Springfield as a college kid, those $5 pizzas used to slap. Let me tell you. They're not bad.
How's the concessions, media food there in Detroit? I know you've
look again. Now that is gold medal worthy. They are consistent. They are consistently on a podium when it comes to pregame food, and so that hasn't changed. And Detroit just in general, I just enjoy it.
That's why you made the trip, huh? That's why you made the trip.
I didn't make it just for the damn. It wasn't for the damn game solely. I had to have a little something extra than the game. But it was good to see the Celtics really, again, stick to the script that they've been using, and that is defend at a high level. Hopefully, you'll make some shots, but at the end of the day, make sure that if you're only going to make one impression, make that impression be at the defensive end of the floor. And Ime, he's been talking about that all season, and it really feels as though like the last month or so, they have not just bought into the concept, but actually bought into the execution of the concept. And that's, it's part of their growth, part of their maturity. And I think it will make a very interesting, it puts Brad Stevens in a very interesting dilemma with the trade deadline coming up.
Yeah, they're impenetrable at that end. And the only time you really see them start to slip up is when they're missing shots. They turn the ball over a little bit. They're giving their opponents opportunities to break out and get them in the fast break rather than the half court where they can really clog that paint. You saw in that Charlotte game, Terry just like going inside and turning back around to the perimeter. The only success that the Hornets were able to have in that game was when they got on the fast break. And I look back on the numbers, that was like a 24-10 advantage for Charlotte in that game on the break. Detroit, not a very fast team. They were unable to take advantage of the Celtics in that area. So the only times that they made their runs in this one were when the Celtics fouled, when they were turning the ball over, or when they had some empty possessions for a stretch there. I think that little push at the end of the third quarter, 7 out of 8 possessions where the Pistons had points there. Amadou Diallo laying his foot down on them a little bit in that spot. That was the only lapse that the
I like
Celtics
him.
had in this one.
He was
Yeah, he's
good.
aggressive.
He was
Yeah, I like
really
him.
good, really good. Exceptional on the boards. I mean, I thought he did a really good job just the entire game while he was out there making plays, rebounding the ball. But he's like a lot of young guys in this league. He fouls the hell out of people too damn much. He had like 5 fouls for the game, and that
They're
doesn't
a
even
small
include.
team.
Yeah, they are. They're a small team and they're not very physical. They don't have a ton of guys that can really attack and get to the rim. They're a weird team. And when you have a guy like Cade not playing, that
Yeah.
only to me that only just spines a brighter
That
spotlight
must
on
have
your
killed you,
position.
Sherrod. You make that trip to see a guy like that, don't you? Ugh.
I had a chance to see him during summer league, and I talked to him a little bit there. And I've been watching him play and just seeing his progression as the season progressed. And yeah, I would have loved to have seen him because I think he's a hell of a player. He's one of my favorite players coming into the draft. When you look at some of the things he was able to do at the college level in a very short period of time, it was clear that he was a next level player, like week one of his college
He's one of my
basketball
favorite
season.
college players ever. Yeah, his
Yeah.
his year there was phenomenal.
Yeah, so it would have been nice to see him play, but to me, this if you're Detroit, you can't just assume you can just play half-ass, even if they don't got their top 3 players around. And I like the fact that they were able to put the smack on, just like they did Miami the other night. With Miami, they didn't have some of their core guys, and they were still able to win that convincingly. That's what you have to do.
Take advantage of those breaks.
Yeah, teams
Yeah.
have been taking advantage of
Yeah.
you like that all season. Why the hell can't you flip the table and do the same?
Well,
That's what they're
but
doing right
Sherrod,
now.
let me ask you this, because this fourth quarter, I mean, is it just me or is this just another reminder? And I know we've been talking about this
Josue
like
is
the last couple of weeks, but
disgusted by this fourth
no,
quarter.
is this just another reminder of how the whole like make way for the kids thing is just not the move for this other team? I mean, face
Well,
it, Sherrod, whether if we're talking about this other team turn the corner, which they are doing right now, we're talking about them going to, I don't know, second, third round of the playoffs, going into a deep playoff run. Do you see a way where they're not, they're able to make that run with guys like the young guys playing, and if the Celtics were to sell off the Schroders and the Richardsons, up was it 4 days or less than a week away from the deadline?
I think the Celtics are in a position where what you saw in the fourth quarter is pretty much what you're going to see in heavier doses if you decide to go with the kids. They're just not ready. It's that cut and dry. I mean, they're just not ready to help you do anything other than move closer to being a lottery team. That's their value. And
Yeah.
if you want to get in the lottery, absolutely play the kids. You're going to get
Right.
there. They're going to help you get there if that's what you want to do. But I don't think that's what Ime wants to do. I don't believe that's what Brad wants to do, especially when you look at where the East is right now and just how basically get to the playoffs, it becomes any team's game at that point. There's such parity right now. When you look at the top 3 or 4 teams in the East are separated by like a game, and you look at teams, where the Celtics are, they're only like maybe 2 or 3 games out of being, fifth or sixth in the East. There is, I think, greater incentive to figure out what you need to do to win games than there is to figure out ways to get a higher pick. And the other thing, too, and we haven't talked a ton about it, but I think it's one of the realities of this team that I think fans don't want to embrace, and that is we're seeing for the first time all season, really the last few weeks, this is what this team was built to do. This is what Ime has when he has all the pieces that he thought he was going to have at the beginning of the season to play with. You look at how they're defending. You look at how they're getting timely shot making. You look at the emergence of Josh Richardson as probably their best, most consistent scorer off the bench. You look at Grant Williams, who, I didn't think he had a particularly great game tonight, but I thought he did do some positive things, and that is his value.
Yeah.
Someone who doesn't have to play great to still has a positive impact. And Schroeder, I'm still trying to figure out what the hell to do with him. He gets you points.
Get him out of here.
Great. I mean,
Ship him out.
if there's one guy that you can look at and say, we can probably pretty much do the same thing we're doing now. If he's not in the mix, he's probably that guy. And if you can find a way to really flip him and get, frankly, a guy who can make shots or a couple of second round picks or just something of value that you can move going forward, then you do that. I don't think he's the guy that's going to really give you significant juice. And remember, he's only played about 15 or so minutes now. And that's, if you think about Peyton Pritchard, you think about Romeo Langford, you telling me those guys can't keep the ship from sinking for 15 minutes a game?
I don't know after tonight.
Oh, but the thing you got to remember too, Bobby,
Against the damn Pistons.
You got to remember that if they're on the floor, there's a high probability that Tate and or Brown will also be on the floor. So they're going to be playing with better players. And
so Ime did get asked about this morning, if ahead of potential tinkering at the deadline, he'd mix and match a little bit, maybe play Pritchard with some of those starting rotation units, and he said that's not in the cards. What he is putting out there now seems to be the plan, at least until Schroeder's gone. So we haven't seen Pritchard at all, I'd say, with these regular rotations right now. I guess the only blessing in disguise is that I looked at the bench rotations, and the only bench unit that's really doing well for them right now is Richardson, Schroeder, Grant, and Horford, with I think it was Tatum mixed in there. So everything else has been pretty shaky when it comes to Boston's second unit. So you're not really falling off that much. And I've said this too, like if you swap out Pritchard for Schroeder in that second unit, there's a chance it could be even better given the shooting that he's able to put out there. But the problem is you haven't looked at it. You haven't tried that at all much this year.
No,
Pritchard.
No.
I think. Hold on, real quick, Sherrod. I think Pritchard for president or something along those lines should be like the Bobby T-shirt. Like when we come out with this brand new gear, like man, you were just like I get it. I know you believe in the kid, but you really want to get this dude in the rotation, huh? Like that's like your
Pritchard
mission. Yeah, Pritchard.
That was the breakout.
One way or another.
That was my breakout prediction. Yeah, out of all the young guys, and he's going to have to go out there and solidify that because right now it's Grant. Did any of us pick Grant as the breakout star among the young guys? I don't think any of us did.
No, and there really was no incentive to pick him because he was the one of the young guys who showed the least promise as early in his career.
Does he get a most improved vote? I mean, it's kind of he was dribbling tonight. Did you see that full court dribble play where he threw the lob to Rob? I think it was in the first quarter. The stuff he's doing, he's starting to like add layers every month or so here.
Yeah, he had a play where he caught the ball and did like a fake pass to Romeo, and then raised up. He didn't make the shot, but the fact that he's had the wherewithal to recognize if I just throw a pump fake, get the defense to shift a little bit, maybe that'll give me a better look at the basket. He's starting to figure out how to be a contributor, and it's not in the way that we saw early in the season where he's knocking down a corner three. And if he's not hitting that shot, he really wasn't healthy. But now he's become, I think, a little bit more engaged as a ball mover. I think the way his fight around the rim now is better. I don't see him getting his ass tossed around nearly as much now as I thought he was early in the season, which didn't make any sense to me because one of the reasons they drafted you was because of your strength, because you're an undersized guy, but you're strong. He's finally starting to flex that muscle on the glass, which is good to see. And again, he had no choice tonight because Isaiah Stewart is a damn monster. And I love it. I love that.
Energetic.
Absolutely love him. And Grant, to his credit, Grant didn't back down from the fight. Got his ass kicked, but he didn't back down from the fight.
What were you going to say about Pritchard? My fault. I cut you off.
No, the thing about Pritchard is that he is what I would call a player who has to recognize his moments of opportunity to assert himself and establish himself. And I don't think he's done a good job of that all season. In fact, I think if there's one knock against him, I would say it's that his inability to make the most of the moment that he gets out there. I think he's a little bit too I'm just happy to be out there. I'm just going to pass the ball. And he's had stretches where he has recognized that, look, this guy's not guarding me. I can shoot. What the hell am I doing passing this to Jason Tatum, who's got a double team just waiting to attack him when I got a wide open jump shot? Let me raise up and knock it down. He's doing more of that. Romeo, I thought, looked a lot more confidence when he was out there. But again, it's one thing to be confident against the end of the bench guys on the Detroit Pistons. It's another thing to have that same level of confidence when you got Jimmy Butler staring at you, when you got guys like Giannis Antetokounmpo, who you're trying to slow down because you're damn sure not going to stop.
Stew, is that his nickname, Beef Stew? Isaiah Stewart?
That's among the many nicknames that he's got.
Yeah,
I just prefer to.
I saw that.
Yeah, I just like to think of him as just the ultimate ass kicker.
Beef Stew. That's an underrated dinner.
Because I
It is underrated
smoke. I don't want any of that smoke. There's like a handful of guys in the league where I just will not. You can't pay me enough to go at them. He's one of them.
He put himself on the map with that skirmish with LeBron earlier in the year. That was
the funny thing about that.
Bobby, you got me thinking about beef stew now. My dad makes a really good beef stew.
So now your dad's in it. So now we got to talk about Josue's dad, Mr.
Yo, that beef stew. You got me thinking about
Chef
the milk tea.
Josue,
My
Chef
fault, Sherrod.
Josue RD, Chef Josue RD is in the house. Okay. Now, Isaiah Stewart, he's just a physical player, and it was good to see the Celtics handle that. I mean, obviously Stewart had a big game.
17 rebounds, Stewart.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. I mean, he had a big game, but you didn't feel as though he was dominating. Those are good numbers, but they weren't. He didn't dominate. He was not the best player on the floor with his rebounding, which is a credit to the Celtics. Because again, I thought they had so many different levels and layers of guys that were able to make an impact. Jason Tatum, and I tweeted this out, but I mean, he was in his AAU
Let's get to
bag for
Tatum.
stretches. I mean, Tatum was. I mean, the dunks, the hanging on the and anyone who spent time around AAU type games knows that when guys get like a nice dunk, there's like another second or two that they hang on the rim to make sure everyone, in case you want to take a picture, you can do that now. I'm still in the rim, and then they let it go. Tatum had like 2 or 3 dunks like that. Rob Williams had at least 2 like that. One where I was afraid Rob was going to hurt himself because it looked like he pulled himself up a little bit before he let go. But this was a very convincing win, even if the final score might say otherwise.
It was a slow start for Tatum, though. I believe he shot 2 and 9 before he went on that 7 of 12 stretch in the third quarter with the 19 points there. And showing a crowd. Obviously, Stewart was physical on the interior. Some guys were ripping the ball away from him. Corey Joseph had a pretty good play on his post up early on, and a lot of guys just bothering him around the rim. And that's still the story of his season to me, is if he can get to the rim, he can establish himself at the basket, he's going to have an outstanding game. If he's showing a crowd, multiple bodies in there, zone, guys pack the paint against him and force him to pass it, that's where he starts to struggle a little bit and get frustrated. He got teed up at one point. Brown did too in this game. And it's another night where, yes, he finished strong, but I thought there was a lot to be left desired, especially against a team like this from Tatum and Brown. Not their most spectacular nights. This is a night where you would expect them to go on combined for 60. And listen, Tatum worked through it. Brown had more of a pedestrian night, I thought. In the end, it's a good one for Tatum, but he really struggled early on, I thought.
No, these are the kind of games where at least 1 or 2 guys in your second unit should be the best player on the floor. This is a game where Josh Richardson should have gone off for like 25, or Schroeder should, because Tatum and Brown, no disrespect to Detroit, but they're too good for you.
Yeah.
You can't. You really
Too
you
big.
can't. They're too big. They're too long. They're too talented. And frankly, I was impressed that those guys didn't just kind of put it in cruise control. I was like Jalen, I thought was very aggressive, almost too aggressive. Well, almost he was. He was too aggressive early on. It felt as if he was trying to prove a point that y'all didn't pick me for the All-Star team, so I'm gonna go out and get 20 in the first quarter. I didn't really like the way he was playing. Tatum, I thought, was just knocking down shots because they couldn't guard him. And so Tatum, I thought he went to heat check mode a little bit earlier than he normally does. But again, I can't be mad at him for that because he's looking in front of him and he's seeing the same thing I'm seeing, a dude that can't guard me. And so what do you do when a dude can't guard you? You give him the business. And Tatum, I thought, was looking to do that early and often. But, again, at the end of the day, they got to win against a team that they were supposed to beat. And they played, I thought, as they put relatively close to the blueprint for success that they're going to have to use if they're going to keep making their way up the standings in the East.
Yeah, especially during this stretch, right? I mean, this is when you got to take advantage of these matchups. And right now, with the way these guys are playing and as a cohesive unit, I mean, that's exactly what you have to do. I'm just happy that we didn't get that side of Tatum and Brown where Brown does that and then Tatum's, all right, well, I guess it's my turn, No, they stayed with the system, Tatum was aggressive. You saw them going downhill a lot, what you want to see in the offense, and taking advantage of those missed shots that Detroit was throwing up, man. There was a lot of bricks in that first quarter, especially the first half altogether, but specifically in that first quarter. And they capitalized on that, so that was good.
Yeah.
Good win. Anything else from this one? I know Tatum had a strong game, a little bit left to be desired. Rob, I thought, was outstanding. We haven't done a Rob segment in a little while, but he still continues to knock off these games. Nice alley-oop from Smart there. Him and Smart combined well throughout this game. I believe he caught about 4 lobs, which was pretty good. Rebounding remained strong. Passing, him and Horford were both getting involved in that part of the game early on, and the blocks just keep piling up for him. I checked before this game, and he is tied for 4th in block percentage in the league. Celtics second in blocks overall since the new year began, New Year's Eve with that win over Phoenix. So they continue to be menacing. And listen, he's awesome on offense. We've always known that. But defensively, they've put him in this nice role where he's behind Horford when Horford's covering the pick and roll in different plays in the middle of the floor. And Horford can just come help side and reject stuff. And his block numbers have just exploded since Ime put him in that role.
Well, the thing about Rob that I think really kind of gets glossed over is that he does so many amazing things, and yet he's not this over the top, exuberant. Y'all see what I'm doing every night, right? Type of guy. He's not. That's not
He's
who he is.
almost too humble.
He's almost too humble.
Yeah.
And Jason Tatum talked a little bit about that, this morning before the game, specifically about how he believes Rob is going to be an All-Star probably sooner rather than later, but in the same breath, he's not sure Rob believes that. And to me, when you think about NBA players, they're they are the largest collection of irrationally confident mofos you will ever find on the planet. They believe. I mean, look, they could average like 1.2 points, and they'll tell you to your face and be straight that I should be a 5-time All-Star by year 6. They have that kind of irrational confidence, and yet Rob is complete opposite of that. He he seems like a guy that's just happy to be in the league, but understands that as he gets older, his level of responsibility increases. The need for him to be an impact player increases. But I don't get the sense that he's thinking, damn, I'm like almost there to be an all-star. Because if you start looking around the East and you just kind of narrow it down to the top 5 centers.
Tatum was talking about him as an all-star, wasn't he?
Yeah. And you start looking at where he fits into the pecking order of Eastern Conference centers. I mean, obviously Joel Embiid is ahead of him. I would say Vucevic is a bit ahead of him. I would say our
Jared Allen.
Jared Allen is ahead of him.
Sabonis.
But when you start talking about the top, like maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, when you get to that like 5 through 9 range, that's where he could potentially enter the equation. And remember, unlike those other guys, he's playing with not one, but 2 all-stars. So his chances of really standing out are lessened because he's got such dominant, high-impact guys that he's playing with. As good as Jared Allen is, I don't know if his numbers would be all that much better than Rob's if he were on the Celtics roster.
Ooh.
I think they would be,
No.
but would they be significantly better than what he's doing?
He's a stat stuffer. He is.
He is, but he's a stat stuffer who is in a role there where there's basically one other guy that gets buckets for your team.
Yeah.
So in the Celtics, you've got at least 2, and they don't just get buckets; they're like top 10, top 15 scorers in the NBA get buckets. No disrespect to Garland, who's doing a hell of a job and deserved to be an All-Star this year, no question. But he ain't getting you 25 a night. He ain't he's good, but he ain't that damn good right now.
I love that quote Smart said after the Hornets game, too. He said, "You're going to beat me out for being one of the best defenders out there," he said to Rob. "Keep going." Even Smart thinks, yeah, this guy could be better than me. And Smart's one of those irrationally confident guys, Sherrod. He sees it, too.
And I love that about him.
Well, I've always thought Rob is the kind of guy who surprises himself, and I feel like year after year that continues. Whether it's the passing or whether it's his high IQ, quite frankly, I mean his basketball IQ. I feel like he's finding that out about himself. He's going through those moments, and I thought that this past offseason was very significant. He talked about that a lot during media day. He talked about how thrilled he was that Al Horford was back. He shared with everyone that Al played a big part in his rookie season, played a big part in teaching him things that he didn't always particularly focus on, as a player. And I think all of that is relevant. I think Rob is really coming into his own. And, when guys like Tatum talk about him, I think that's relevant too. I love the way Tatum talked about it today too, when he said all those kind words and said that he does think he has the potential to be an all-star, to be like a Rudy Gobert of the league, a future Rudy Gobert. And he's like, man, I feel like I'm always getting asked about Tatum. And I feel like Tatum didn't say that as like he was annoyed by it, but he's just like, man, like that's how good this kid is. That's how much he's developing, and everyone is noticing it. And it's not just me anymore. The secret's out. And I think all that bodes well for this team and their attitude. Knock on wood, barring any injuries, it's exactly what you want to see for this team at this point of the season. Because let's face it, we're well past the halfway mark. I know we're not even. I guess we're somewhat close to the All-Star game, but that's still past the halfway mark. The way the schedules are played out nowadays. So this is huge. This is exactly the time for the Celtics to be striding the way they are right now. And this is a winning streak now. I guess we could say that, right? It's officially a winning streak.
Yep. They 4 games over 500, which is Surprising place for them to be. It's going to
Man,
keep rolling. They got
has that
Orlando.
happened before?
It's
This
about
season?
damn time.
I don't
Yeah.
think it's happened this season. It's been
No,
I
a long
think there
time.
was a win streak late last year where they got to that mark. But
Not this
since, no,
season.
not this
Yeah,
year.
but not this year. They've never been 4 games over 500, I don't think.
No, they haven't. They've been under more often than they've been above. So it's a good stretch. The schedule is softened out. They've been fully healthy. I still wonder how this team's going to sustain an injury if that comes up. The depth does not look great on this squad right now, especially if they end up moving out Schroeder, and that's another conversation we can have. But there's a ton of other stuff more urgently going around today, and I think the one
What you got,
everybody
Bobby?
looked at was
What you got?
the first blockbuster of deadline season. Blazers dumping out their depth, giving those wings over the Clippers. Clippers got a big win over the Lakers last night. And this was a guy we talked about potentially landing in Boston, helping their wing depth, and Norman Powell, Robert Covington, an expiring contract, guy that can help. That's where this deal probably got a little expensive for Boston's liking. Plus, you take on, if you're the Blazers on that end, Eric Bledsoe, Winslow, and I guess a promising guy in Keon Johnson. I don't know a ton about him. Usually I'm up on my rookies, but he's a guy that they really liked in this deal. And I thought most stunningly of all, the Clippers only give up a second-round pick here to get a guy like Powell.
That's what really kind of
Crazy.
chafed me in this whole deal, was that they didn't get a first-round pick out of this, because
Stunning.
you just look at what they were giving up talent-wise, and you look at what they could have. I just don't think you give up a player that good and don't get a first-round pick, but especially when you are sending a very clear signal that you are looking to reboot going forward.
Right.
You reboot with first-round picks, even if they are, conditional picks, where if they fall within a certain, protection, they become 2 second-round picks. I don't care. Give me something of value beyond a second-round pick. I thought that not getting a first-round pick really tilted the deal, in my opinion, significantly in LA's favor.
Yeah, I can't help but wonder if there was just too much talk around those guys, and it was one of those deals where they said, "Look, we either do this now, or it's going to be long gone. Take it or leave it," type of thing. Because I'm with you. I can't understand why you wouldn't, force that. Like, look, first rounder or nothing, because that's the situation that we're in right now, and that's how valuable these pieces are. Man, I'm surprised that they were able to get away with
I
that
love
second rounder.
Powell. Yeah, he's pushing 30, but he's a guy who has had some monster offensive games in his time. And he's a good shooter, versatile wing, a little short at 6'3". He's not like a Tatum Brown size wing there, but gives you some secondary playmaking. He was my favorite guy coming to Boston that potentially this deadline. So
He was not mine. He was not mine. Not even
I was
close.
really frustrated to see this afternoon, but there's a big money thing at play here, as there always is, right? Like, they get off, I think it's about $26 million here between those two guys. Covington was expiring, but Powell was signed for a long time. They like Anthony Simons, and Bledsoe has like a partial guarantee next year. So Richardson, if you were doing like a comparable trade from the Celtics side, it would be something like Richardson, Neesmith or Langford, and I guess you could throw in like Ennis's contract or something in there, in that Winslow role. So, the talent's fairly comparable there, but this wasn't a talent thing for the Blazers. They just want to get off this money, and there's more guaranteed money in the second year of Richardson than there is with Bledsoe here. Bledsoe will be an interesting buyout guy too in this sense. But if you're Boston and you give up a first-round pick in this deal, yeah, maybe the Blazers stay a little bit higher over the tax there. You send out less money. I haven't done the full churning of the math here. The Clippers were definitely in a position to take on more money than the Celtics were, because Lord knows they're tax averse right now. But this is a guy that could have really helped the Celtics, I thought. Shooting, playmaking, size on the perimeter, allow them to play 3 wings. He would have brought all these different things. Now, do you bring back Covington too? Then that deal gets really expensive. So that's another advantage that the Celtics probably didn't have here.
Well, Bobby, one thing you touched on, and I think it's going to be worth monitoring going forward, is who gets bought out. And because to me, if you're the Celtics, the perfect storm would be to move a guy like Schroeder, get maybe a late first or maybe multiple second-round picks, and then pick up a guy off the heap like like Bledsoe.
You like that idea? John did earlier too.
That's what's going to happen.
I love that.
What's going to happen.
Well, when you think about the Celtics and just the moves that they make in season, they seem to be at their best when they're getting guys who are just available.
Man, Eric Bledsoe would be fit in their mold.
Listen. I
It's not a
am not
bad
a
rental.
huge. I'm not a huge Bledsoe fan, but to your point, Josue, if he's a rental and I'm getting him for like basically minimum wage, I'm liking that. It's the difference between basically, you know, do I have a choice in buying this really expensive vehicle, or do I get this hoopty that can get me from point A to point B for no money? If all I
So
want to do get from point A to point B, then boom, I'll take the cheap hoopty.
Yeah.
Bledsoe's an interesting guy. I have never been a fan. I thought the
Me
Bucks
neither.
getting off him was a massive
Genius,
win for them.
genius, genius.
Then the Pelicans made a big deal to get off of him. The Grizzlies made a big deal to
He's
get
just
off of
getting
him, and
he's just getting passed
and
around, man.
now
Yeah.
here go the Clippers. I mean, early in the year, the Clippers fans were going crazy. They were like, "Can we stop Lou from playing this guy somehow?" And he actually ended up getting better later in the year, close to this deal, to the point where I saw a lot of Clippers fans today like, "Ooh, is Bledsoe? Should we have given him up? Because then we don't have a backup point guard."
That's
All
why I
I
thought
can
it was so
say
funny, man. When we were out in LA, that's why I thought it was so funny. They had a post game happy birthday interview or something. I guess they
with
were
him,
doing as a promotion. Remember, I'm trying to do the post game show, and all of a sudden, all these fans come back into the stands. He comes out, this huge ovation. I had to go move, and then I ran to Marcus Smart. But anyways, yeah, I thought it
it's
was so
gonna be so
random
funny.
that they would give that to him because people haven't been crazy about him, right? The fans weren't crazy about Bledsoe, but yeah,
If you
I can
swap out
understand that.
Schroeder, if you swap out Schroeder and you bring in Eric Bledsoe, Bledsoe's immediately gonna have that Schroeder target on his back. He's gonna be the guy coming in shooting 1 of 7 from three. Not spacing the floor at all next to Smart. There's some things I like about him, Sherrod, but
I
man,
think he's a good
he
defender.
is he
I
is a
think,
great defender.
and I,
Yes,
and
that's
and
what
I,
he
and I
brings to the table.
and when you look at the way the Celtics are playing now, if you add another guy along those lines coming off that second unit, if Josh Richardson can continue to just be that solid scoring force that he's been, and Grant continues to give you a little this, little that, yeah, you add a guy that brings a different dimension to the table. But to the point that a lot of fans are making, and I'm totally in on this. I think they need to get another scorer. I think they need to get a guy who can actually get you buckets. I think you need to get a guy like Terrence Ross in Orlando. I think you need to get a guy whose pedigree in the league is established, and that pedigree is they get buckets.
right.
Powell's that guy, 19 points per game.
Yeah, but Paul's too
He's
damn expensive. I mean,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
bring in Powell.
Powell was
You
that guy a few years ago. He
Yeah,
was
you
that
bring
guy.
him
Yeah,
into the mix. You're talking about someone who you envision as being one of your top three players, part of your big three, really. Because I mean, that's the role that they were kind of looking at him in Portland when you look at CJ and you look at Dame. But here, no, your big three is pretty clear. It's Tatum, it's Brown, and it's Rob. And if you don't believe me, ask the best player, Tatum, who can't stop talking about Rob. I'm pretty sure at some Tatum probably wasted a midnight thinking about damn that lob to Rob was nice.
Powell's
Block
last
shot.
game.
That block shot was nice. Rob is that guy. I mean, he has become the favorite player of your best player,
Yeah,
and you don't mess with that. You don't. You
I'm
just
just
don't.
he's
saying.
your favorite player's favorite player. I like that.
Exactly.
Powell's last game in a Blazers uniform, 10 to 20, 30 points, 5 rebounds. And that's with him, how all the pressure on him out there with Lillard and others
Bobby,
gone. He'd be
I'm not
playing
gonna.
off
I'm
Tatum
not
and
gonna
Brown.
cherry. I'm not gonna cherry pick because we can play that game. Evan Fournier, he can drop 30 on you and drop three the next game.
This is like
Yes, yes.
So
this
That's
this
why I
is
cringe
like
when you bring up Fournier, Bobby. That's why I
this
cringe.
is a
I'm like,
premium version of Fournier right
you
here
don't
in
remember the
Powell.
bad. You don't
yeah,
remember the bad.
There was a lot of bad with Fournier, but that's why I'd like an upgrade version here in Powell. He'll be great for the Clippers here. This is an outstanding trade for them.
I think he'll be
Easy
good for
win,
the
I
Clippers.
think.
I don't
He's
know if
off
he'll
the
be
table
great.
though. He's off the table for the Celtics though.
He's off
Yeah.
the table.
So
So
why do
now
we
we
care
move
about him?
we move on. This is an interesting one
I
today
like Terrence Ross though. Terrence Ross is not
from
bad.
this is probably the guy you would have given up in a potential Powell deal in terms of money. Josh Richardson. Schroeder certainly on the block. I think everyone's available on the Celtics. Or at least I did until Heavy.com, Joe Sway's site there, Steve Bopet. Another
I like it.
bombshell report today saying that Richardson not necessarily on the trade block. They like him. He's got that second-year extension. He's their salary if they want to get anything done around the edges of the roster, but he has played well in
Yeah,
recent weeks. He's had some real nice closing stretches of games. I remember that Knicks game we were at, Sherrod, the Hornets game that he closed out with the starters there, and him in for Horford with the starters, plus 26 per 100. So that is
yeah.
looking like an effective closing unit for Boston right now. And he's obviously a big part of their depth, too. I think what's underrated with him as well as if you trade Schroeder, he's probably your backup point guard essentially, which we haven't seen him do a lot this year, but it is something he's capable of. I just find it interesting, and I am going to pull up the article, Josue, but not on the block. I mean, like, you got to give up somebody if you're going to make a trade here at the deadline. And I like Richardson. He's been a pleasant surprise. I did not like the player coming into Boston, but I've been sold since the way he's played this year and his personality and other things that he's brought. It's just I'm not buying that he's untouchable or anything like that.
I don't think you would call him untouchable, Bobby, but I think what's most important to point out is that he's now shooting 41% from behind the arc.
They're not looking to dump him, I guess, is what he's saying.
Well, no, I think what he's saying is things have changed, and they're not looking to dump him. He's not like at the top of the list of guys that they need to trade or sell. I think this is exactly what they wanted to see out of him, but they didn't get that consistency up until this point. Now, the fact that he's shooting 41%, he's challenging Grant Williams, as the best 3-point shooter on this team. I mean, that's exactly was part of that extra year. If you're Brad Stevens, you were like, look, okay, we're bringing this guy in, let's tack on an extra year because we think he's going to pop. We think he's going to revert to being that guy who we saw in Miami. And it was late, but that's what we're seeing now. He's finally reached that plateau of connecting on, over 40% of his 3-pointers. And right now, I think he's dialed in. I think he's committed. I think, we talked about this a couple of nights ago. I think it's a matter of now you got a motivated Richardson, and now that translates on the defensive end of the floor where the Celtics have been solid on that end, but they could need all the extra help that they could get. And I think having him focused right now and dialed in and if the Celtics are on the verge of going into the playoffs with this same sort of momentum, I think he's going to be a big part of that. Call him a culture guy, if you will, which is something that we would have never said 2 months ago, but I think he's sort of flourished into that guy. And you're seeing that. He's on his feet a lot. He's cheering on his teammates. He's always smiling out there. I think he's a good fit for what this culture is and what Ime's rebuilds in that locker room.
Bull Pet wrote, teams that thought Richardson might be very available are finding that's not necessarily the case. He points out the Fournier exception, the Thompson exception are most expected to be used as trade tools when the offseason arrives and teams have a better idea of where they are and where they are not. So Bull Pet, one among many, painting a quiet picture this deadline for this team, which I don't love. I mean, would you rather have Richardson right now, who, listen, I've been sold on, or a guy like Harrison Barnes, who this team's been connected to for a long time and has multiple years on his contract?
Could you stop aiming high at these expensive options, man? That's another one. Sherrod, what do you think?
I think Bobby's that kid who, if you say, Bobby, we're gonna go to the store and get
everyone's riding high off the streak right now.
Bobby's all about going to Roof Chris, and when we say let's go get something to eat, Bobby wants to go to like Roof Chris and some shit like that. No, but this is the thing though. This is the thing that happens every time this time of year. The team that starts playing well before
you gotta pay for good food, Sherrod. You're gonna end up at Mickey D's.
Yeah, see,
there are worse places.
It's like when your mom tells you, "All right, we're coming in here, but don't ask you for nothing." All right, like that's what I tell Bobby that.
They're playing better, and Josh Richardson. If you're being honest, he's been your best source of offense off the bench. And if you were to move him, even if you got another guy who, let's say, is a scorer, there's still intangibles that he brings to the table that if you're the Boston Celtics, you don't necessarily want to part with. He fits in well with your Jays. They like him. They like the role that he plays. He has become a very reliable 3-point shooter, which is something he could never say about him previously. And maybe to me, most important, he wants to be here. And I think that's something that, for Boston specifically, needs to be stressed. When you get guys here who play well and they want to be here. That's why, you look at just the evolution of Marcus Smart over the last 2-3 weeks, there's no doubt he wants to be here. And there's no doubt about that. And so when you have guys who play well and they clearly they're invested in your organization, invested in the culture, you have to think long and hard before breaking that up. To me, at that point, you have to, if you're going to break it up, you have to break it up because of the talent you're getting back. You have to, because the talent is so great that even if they're not a natural fit in your culture, they're so good that you're still going to win games.
You want to add to that, right?
Yeah.
You want to add to him.
You don't know how good Klay Thompson is going to be for the rest of the season, but if you had a chance to add him to the mix, you damn will do it. You absolutely do it.
Right.
Absolutely will do it 25 out of 25 times. So, again, I like what Josh Richardson is giving, and it makes sense for them to not want to part ways with him. But let me be clear about something though, and this is something I think a lot of people, I think they get it twisted. Just because they're not making calls to say that they're open to trading him doesn't mean that they're not open to trading him. They're still going to
Right.
take calls. It's not like teams are going to call them and say, "Hey, can we talk about Josh Richardson?" They're going to say, "Nah, we can't talk about that." No,
How
no,
dare you bring him up?
how,
Yeah,
how
right.
dare you bring up our seventh man and try to get
I wouldn't sell him. No, I wouldn't. If someone even
You-
calls and offers you a first, it's tempting. Depends what kind of first it is,
But my
obviously.
point is, you have to take that phone call. You
Yeah.
have to take that text. You have to address that. You don't just say, "Nope, he's not available." And that's why,
Right.
to me, there's only a handful of players throughout the NBA that, as we get close to the trade deadline, without question they ain't going anywhere. Chris Paul is not going anywhere. LeBron James is not going anywhere. Anthony Davis probably isn't going anywhere. But to me, he's not untouchable. There's so few guys in the NBA that you can look at and say without a shadow of a doubt that guy is not on the trading block. And
James Harden. We'll get to him in a minute.
Oh, that's a great segue, Bobby. You should have used that one.
he is available.
No, I want to stick on this for just one more minute. I hope people aren't getting too high off the streak here, because if we talked 2-3 weeks ago, everyone would be saying, "Oh, Richardson, let's try to get something better there." People were more open to moving Smart back then. This team has turned it around, but I don't feel like they are suddenly East contenders here. I don't think their ceiling is necessarily even above the first round at this point. You're still a 9 seed here, even at 10 out of 14 coming in tonight. I'm not sure where they are exactly after tonight, but they're still in that play-in picture right now. There's still a number of talented teams that could really push you in those spots. So there's still going to be a desire among this front office to improve here. And Richardson's one of the guys that I think you can do better than. I would love to have a Barnes type guy over him. If it takes a pick, go ahead and do it, but you're sending out salary, you're matching it, you're staying below the tax. There's ways to do this from a financial standpoint that don't make you, do a heist on Wick's wallet before the season ends here. And Richardson's salary is a big part of that. I've been impressed. I haven't been blown away by Richardson. He's been unavailable at times. I think you're getting a little bit of fool's gold with the 3-point percentage. I mean, this guy is not a 41% 3-point shooter. He had that massive streak in the other game that, again, gave him a boost there. So I'm looking at this team right now, and they're playing well, but what's their potential here? Who are they really going to push in the East with this group, even playing as well as they are right now? You still see the lapses offensively. They struggled in that second quarter tonight, just scoring 18 points against a really bad defense. The game still looks so hard for Brown and Tatum in terms of spacing. So you got to have some urgency here to upgrade this roster. You can't just look at yourself going on a little stretch here, especially as inconsistent as this group is said, and say, this is the group. I mean, I look at this roster right now, and I can't be satisfied with what they have right now still, even though everyone's playing in their roles and settling down a little bit. They need some help, especially with Josue said, off the bench. That group leaves a lot to be desired, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's the big concern with this group is that second unit. To me, they are the Achilles heel of this roster. They're the group that I am most concerned with. But here's the flip side to that. The Celtics are basically three and a half. I think 3.5 games out of the number 3 spot in the East.
Right. That's what I'm about to get into. Yeah.
I mean, that's literally like having.
But they're playing some crap teams right now.
But Bobby, the conference is cratering right now.
Yes,
this is the crack.
Their schedules are getting tougher. The Celtics is getting easier.
I think
the thing that the Celtics were waiting on.
Yeah, and I think Bobby, the concern is to me. What is this team going to be able to do in the playoffs? Because I do think that even if they stood the course, because of the way they're hitting the craptitude section of their season, they're going to win a lot of games. They're going to win a lot more games than they're going to lose. And that's going to allow them to potentially get a higher seed.
But what's the goal of this season? That's still my question. What's the direction here? What are they trying to accomplish?
I think at this point,
compete, and then what? You're middle of the conference. You haven't really upgraded the roster
This is
here.
what you want to do, Bobby. This is what you want to do. You want to be able to compete night in, night out with whoever the hell you put out there. You want Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown to continue to evolve and develop and just magnify their ability to lead this team going forward. You want to have salary cap flexibility, which is why you're open to moving guys at the trade deadline and this offseason, a la Al Horford. And you, maybe most important, you want to make sure that all those things that we're talking about, everyone that matters to this organization understands those things, are on the same page with those things, and are rowing in that direction. That's what you want out of the season. And the early portion of the schedule didn't really allow that because you had guys injured, you have guys in health and safety protocol. You really didn't know
But if you
what
get a guy injured again, this group's in trouble, I think.
yeah, you're back to where you were back in November, December. There's no question about you, and especially if it's one of your top 3 or 4 guys. Because I mean, to me, right now, there's three guys that, in my mind, you can't afford them to miss any games of significance. It's one thing if it's a game here or there just for either rest or whether it's like a little bump or bruise, but there are 3 guys that you cannot afford to lose any more time with this year.
Yeah, you know what, Bobby? I think we're all not naive enough to think that this team is a championship contender, or at least a team that can win the East. But what they do have right now is momentum, and you couple that with the fact that the conference is cratering. You got the Brooklyn Nets falling apart, man. They're talking about potentially trading, one of their most consistent guys this year. Durant's hurt. I think this is a great time for the Celtics to capitalize, but at the same time, you don't want to sacrifice enough talent or too much talent that you end up not being able to compete on the back end of the regular season. Now, someone like Josh Richardson is interesting because you had that extra year. So does it make sense for them to bring in a rental, essentially trying to replace him and hoping that it's going to better the second unit?
I wouldn't do a
one of your
rental,
top guys.
no.
Right, but I think you have to remember that he wouldn't be a rental for another team, right? I think having him on the books for another year could turn out to be a good thing for the Celtics. And I think when you look forward to what this team can do at the trade deadline, whether it's a buyout option or whether it's bringing in someone that can help you in that
Listen,
rotation.
I like
that's
Richardson. I like Richardson. I love Barnes. And we'll get into some other names too. I saw a couple people talking about.
Yeah, but right now, Bobby, you're trying to instill a culture. Like you're trying to this quote unquote bridge.
Is
year,
Richardson part of their?
About.
I guess he's part of their culture. But
I think he is. I just think again, Bobby, you're thinking about putting together a championship team within the next 5 days. Like it's just not going to happen like that, And I think
no,
right now,
I just think you're several steps away.
Right, which is just where we always thought this team was going to be. I mean, we never expected this team to be a championship contender, and nor did we expect it to turn into that overnight. But what we didn't expect was this 500 team throughout the course of the entire season, essentially. So now that you finally found some momentum, you want to keep the guys that are instilling that culture. You want to keep the guys that are going to keep that message flowing, and guys who are locked in. And look, I don't want to go on a tirade about why this team cannot trade Josh Richardson. But I just think, again, it's about trying to help one of the few options you have off the bench, trying to strengthen that bench. And if it means trading Schroeder and a young guy, or Schroeder and a second rounder and a young guy to help consolidate that bench and bring in a guy that's going to be a weapon who can score, who can defend, then I'm all for it. I want to see this roster better after the deadline than what we see now. But I'm not ready to say the Celtics have to go out and get someone that's like a 17-point scorer. I don't think that's it.
If you could do Richardson, Schroeder, and a first for Barnes, throw Neesmith in there maybe as the money or whatever, just a throwing guy. You're not doing it?
No, I'm not giving him a first and all that other stuff.
Yeah, because Bobby, that's your squad after that. Like that's your squad. That's it. Like you really tied yourself to that core.
If I'm going to give them both of those guys, I'm not giving them a pick. In fact, hell, I want a pick in return.
Give me one of your picks. Right.
We dreamt of the Celtics finally having a roster where you could throw some guys into deals and get stuff done. And now guys are falling in love with Richardson and Rob and
Bobby.
Smart. And
the kids didn't do their part. Okay, they didn't develop, and that's not on them. Maybe that's just who they are, right? The Pritchards and the Romeos and the Neesmith. They haven't developed yet. That's quite frankly just what it boils down to. The Grant Williamses and the Robert Williams, I guess. I feel like we have to go a few years back. I mean, those guys are locked in right now to the rotation, whereas those other guys I just mentioned, they're still fighting for a spot.
So I guess the Schroeder thing, I've heard a couple of things, bouncing around from him over the last couple of weeks here. Bulls are interested. You could potentially get Troy Brown back for him, who's fine. He's not Schroeder. He's just a guy to fill that spot.
He's no
Some
Barnes.
savings, yeah. So that would just essentially be a dump right there to Chicago. The Clippers are obviously in the market now for a backup point guard, so you would look at them potentially taking on Schroeder in that spot. And I actually like the idea that Sherrod brought up, now that I've thought about it a little bit. Bledsoe for pennies, although you'd really run into some frustrating lineups late in games. I'll warn you on that one. Wouldn't be a
he's not going to
bad
be
pickup,
there.
especially with this team's identity. Yeah, you could potentially sit him on a minimum deal late in games.
Yeah.
Different situation than what he's been in.
Yeah, you're not going to. If I'm watching him play key minutes in the fourth quarter, it means probably they're losing badly or they've had a huge lead. I don't see him being put in a position where he has to play a pivotal role. But again, that's assuming, and it's a big assumption, that he's going to get bought out and he'll be looking to go somewhere and try to reestablish his value. That's what that would be about.
And there'll be minutes from here, which are always valuable if he's trying to restore his value and getting a place that fits him a little bit. But there's also ring chasing opportunities too for him, and that is not this team. So
right, and he knows that. Right.
We'll see where that goes. That's the Celtics' latest big one tonight, though. We got to talk about this before we get out of here. The Athletic, Shams. I've been listening to the experts on this, the people that are in the know, Low, the mismatch, others, reporters around the NBA, Windhorst, all these other people. And this has been talked about like it's real for a little while now, to the point where last week, 2 weeks ago, where I rolled my eyes and said, this is just the Sixers pumping up the Simmons tires. Shams dropping tonight that this could happen is a real alarm setter around the NBA, I think, right now. You could potentially see, according to Shams, Simmons go to Brooklyn and not Kyrie. This was like the fake trade we threw around early in the season, the Kyrie Simmons swap. James Harden go to Philadelphia, where he was originally supposed to end up in the original Harden trade, Simmons going down to Houston. Well, now Simmons would join Durant and Kyrie in Brooklyn, be that defensive anchor, the passer to connect everything there, and Harden would pair with Embiid to create what I called like a Kobe Shaq light there in Philadelphia. I mean, that team would be terrifying immediately, throwing Harden in the mix as the lead ball handler there. Not to mention Curry, Maxey, all this other stuff that they have, and Embiid being the MVP frontrunner. What scares me
so
here...
that's why you want the Celtics to get Harrison Barnes so much. Now I get it.
Yes, I mean, it is about to get real in the East. So here's the thing. I don't bank on this happening this week, but there's real momentum toward this happening in the summer, and it makes sense for both teams, which is the really scary part here. Now, I am no Simmons fan, but you throw him as the third option on a Brooklyn team, have him passing rather than scoring, and that's a real recipe for success there, and they'd be a much better defensive team immediately. There's concerns about signing Harden to I guess it would be $200 million deal or something close to it in Philadelphia after this year. I'd be worried about that if I'm Philadelphia, but listen, your time is now to win a championship, and then Harden gives you the best opportunity, definitely over Simmons right now. So what prevents this from happening, Sherrod, if, this makes so much sense for both sides?
Well, I think if there's going to be someone that will kill the deal, it'll be Brooklyn. It'll be Brooklyn because I think Brooklyn, because they're the team that knows exactly the commodity that they're parting with. They don't know what they're getting with Ben Simmons. They don't know where he's at conditioning wise. They won't know where he's at mentally speaking. He is, his camp has made it clear that, just this whole, Simmons ordeal has put a strain on his mental health. And that stuff is real. It's very real. So if you're Brooklyn, you have to go into this thinking, okay, how much time will we need to devote to making sure that from a mental standpoint, he is where he needs to be, that we get him the help that he needs in order to really strengthen himself both on and off the court. And to me, the one thing, as I've talked with different folks throughout the league about Ben Simmons that keeps coming back, but no one wants to talk about publicly, is how things ended the last time he was on the floor in Philly. He didn't just have a bad game. He choked when the game was on the line. And it's not, he choked not because he took a bad shot, not because he tried to make a play and it didn't work out. He choked because
It was despicable.
he was afraid that he would get fouled. He was afraid that he might actually have to deliver in the clutch. And if you're playing with Kevin Durant, you're playing with Kyrie Irving, guys who they froth at the mouth at opportunities to deliver in the clutch. This dude is not going to fit in with that mindset. How is he going to fit in as part of their big three
Yeah.
if he doesn't have that killer in him? Because that is a very clear and undeniable mindset that you have to have when you are on that level, when you are competing for what those guys are competing for. And the other thing too, the reason why James Harden was such an ideal addition to them was because Kyrie Irving has won a championship. Kevin Durant has won multiple championships. James Harden went there with that desire to join them in that ultra elusive club.
Where does he have a better spot to win it this year, though? Philly or Brooklyn?
I think this year, Philly,
Mm-hmm.
because he's got the best player on the team is motivated to do that and is playing at an MVP level. He has a head coach who is one of the just great psychological mojo guys in the game in Doc Rivers. You got young players around you who are playing above their heads, and if you add someone like Harden to the mix, depending on how many of those guys you're going to keep around, because you're not going to keep your entire team intact. It's not going to be a player for player swap. Philly's going to have to most likely give away at least one or two guys.
That's another good thing for the Nets.
So,
I'd push them to give up picks. We gave up all these picks for Harden. Give them back to us, and we'll use those to improve our roster elsewhere.
That's one way of doing it. But you know what? I think I want a player beyond our good friend Ben Simmons.
Yeah,
Because,
and that's going to be the other second point.
Yeah.
And if you're Philly, that's where you're like, wait, hold up. I don't know if we're going to do that. And so again, I think that the best opportunity for a deal to get done will be, as you point out, Buck, I do think it'll be this summer. But it says a lot about where everyone is heads at right now. The fact that this is something that's very real and being discussed.
Hey, if you're Philly, there's an urgency to get this done now because you have Embiid playing at this level. Sure, you could wait and get Harden for less in the offseason if he demands this route. But if you pay a little bit more right now, you're able to take bigger advantage of this Embiid season that he's happening. And from a Brooklyn perspective, they are struggling.
Yeah, they need to make a change. But from Philly's perspective, though, which to me, that's the one that I think the most about, and the one that I actually wrote about, I'm writing about for Bleach Report. You have to understand that Philly is right there to having the best record again in the Eastern Conference. And they've done this with their second best player not logging a single minute all season. If you're able to add a guy like James Harden to just frankly, fast track your offense in ways that you have not seen before, you're going to feel good about your chances because again, Milwaukee is a team that they're the champions, but they're beatable. Brooklyn has already shown that they're easily can be taken out. You start looking at Miami is playing really good, but I don't think teams are waking up shaking in their boots that they might have to beat Miami to get to the next round of the playoffs.
No.
You start looking at the teams that are in that mix with you if you're Philadelphia, and you realize quickly that your opportunity is now. Your window of opportunity could be right now.
Whew.
You could be like the Phoenix Suns were a year ago, where there's certain things that just broke right for them, and they had the roster constructed to take advantage of those breaks.
Hey, and if you're Brooklyn, you do this deal, all of a sudden you have a guy in Simmons that you can throw at Giannis, that you can throw at Embiid. I don't know how well that would go for him, but you can try it. And, all these other great players in the East. I've said for a long time that Brooklyn's lack of defensive identity is what's going to prevent them from ever winning a championship with this group. They don't have size inside. They don't have perimeter defenders. They just get mashed at that end. They did all right early in the season. But Simmons, you talk about the unknown commodity, Sherrod, and I have not been the biggest Simmons fan at all. Like when talk of him emerging came to the Celtics, I'd said, no way. You just don't know what this guy's going to offer in a primary role. But he is in such a low-key role if he goes to the Nets. Durant's handling the scoring. Kyrie, a lot of the ball handling. He can just be in that complementary role position that he really loves and that he wanted to play in Philadelphia. But they just needed so much more from him. In this situation, you got Kyrie, you got KD, you got shooters around you. They're going to need more. You're right about that, Sherrod. Like, I know for a fact Philly's not going to offer Maxey in this deal, and Curry, I think they'd be hard pressed to get him too. But you could get a Danny Green here. You could get some picks to, do other deals around the league, because it sounds like Joe Harris might not play this year, and they're gonna have to replace him. So I think this is trying to get done now. Maybe these teams get cold feet at the last minute, because this is just such a hard deal to do with one of your primary competitors in the East. But I want to see it done. I think this is just like the ultimate chaotic ending. One of the great, most captivating trades in NBA history. I think this would be. Where are you at, Josue?
Finally, trying to get in here. Damn, Bobby. No, I was just trying to say, listen, this doesn't make sense for Brooklyn. So why do it? Why do it? Like, at the end of the day, you're giving up James Harden, and you're not getting back in return nearly the same production. And people can say what they want about Ben Simmons and his stats and his. Where's he been? Where's dude been? He's a ghost this season. So don't give me any.
How are you
that.
feeling about Harden,
Brooklyn
though?
Nets. This is a whole summer. Hold on a second. This is a whole summer, a whole training camp. This is a whole process. You're not throwing this dude in here mid-season, and not even mid-season. What, finish up the 30% of the rest of the year? And
that is weird, man.
Come on, man. Even with Kevin Durant, even with Kyrie Irving, especially with Kyrie Irving, you think they're going to have patience with this guy? Like, you think they're going to be like, oh, okay, Ben, like, are you okay mentally to go and, this best of 7 series? Hell no. Hell no. These are veterans. These are champions. And to Sherrod's points, they're hungry. They want to prove that they can win championships without their respective counterparts, whether that was LeBron James in Cleveland or the Splash Brothers in the Golden State or in California. Like, this doesn't make sense at all for Brooklyn. So I really don't see this happening. If it happens in the offseason. But if you're the Brooklyn Nets, why shoot yourself in the foot and think that everything is going to work itself out within the next 2 months or so? No way. No way. If you're Philly, hell yeah, you do this. But if you're the Brooklyn, no, it doesn't make any sense.
The additional compensation is really what
you could throw in. Because you could throw in the Currys, you could throw in Thibault, you could throw in nothing. No, it's not happening.
See, I think that will make it interesting if you were to throw in those type of days. Because the thing that you got to remember, and we all know this, you're not getting Kyrie Irving, you're getting part-time Kyrie Irving. And so you're going to have part-time Kyrie Irving with a non-shooter filling the void as your second best player on those nights when he doesn't play. So that is a downgrade significantly. He does a lot of great things defensively, and he really is a defensive unicorn when you think about a 6'11" guy who has the ability to defend all 5 positions and do it at a high level. But
you just don't know where he's at. It's a good
point.
You don't
know where he's at. You don't know where he's at.
Is he ready to play next week?
If we're taking bets on that, I'm going to say no.
Yeah.
And that's why if you are Philly, you are absolutely trying to get this done ASAP so that you can get it done before they change their damn mind. That's your thing. Because
exactly. If you're Philly, you're doing that, right?
And until now, the Nets were unwilling to be involved in this talk. And what changed apparently this week, according to Shams, is that they're entertaining this. They're at least picking up the phone now and listening. And that's what you said, Sherrod. If other stuff gets involved, that probably makes the Nets think about it a little more, because they do need shooting, they need defense, they need a lot of different things, and they got to think long and hard about this, because if Harden's intent on going to Philly, all of a sudden Philly's in a major leverage situation this offseason where you could probably get Simmons and that's it. You're going to like that, and that's what you're going forward with in that situation. So
like that's the thing. If you're going into a championship run, then all is forgiven. Everything's going to be fine. But if you don't, sure, you do risk James Harden's going to jump and go elsewhere, but you still have that trade on the table. I mean, let's face it, Philadelphia's made it clear. They want a clear-cut, all-star, superstar-like person in return, because they've turned down so many different offers up until this point. So if that's the case, then that deal's not going anywhere. It's going to be waiting for you in the summertime. You might as well just try to do what you can with the pieces that you have now and try to put together a championship run and then revisit this conversation in the summer.
Unless Harden's, heads in a different place the rest of this year. Now, here's the underrated aspect of this.
That could happen.
I don't like where Harden's going. Not only the money that he's about to make, but just his body and where that's gone, his physique over the recent years, his numbers this year have really capsized. He's an all-star, but man, do I think he was the least deserving of all these all-stars. Maybe Middleton, but Harden's there on the name, not the numbers this year. I just have not loved what he's looked like this year, and the new rules have not fit him well. He's still a great passer, but you look at his numbers this year, and he does not look like Harden. So that's the benefit, I think, is that Simmons, even though he's making a ton of money, it's less than what Harden's about to make, and he's still young. There's still some upside to Simmons, I think, just a little bit, especially if he's on a team where his role and everything, the comfort level fits him. And the Nets, it's New York, but you've seen Kyrie and KD escape the real New York media experience by going to the Nets and the scrutiny there. So I guess, you make some good points, Josue. If you run this out with Harden, Kyrie, Durant, they get rid of that mandate in New York, and you have those three, that's still going to be a really hard team to beat for Philadelphia or anyone, even the Bucks. But it's just a question, if you're them, of whether you're going to have those three ever, with KD hurt now, Kyrie still not taking that vaccine, and Harden, really being the most stable among all of them, which is surprising considering
I know
the shape he's in.
Would have never, ever in a million years thought that he would be the most stable guy on your team.
I know, right?
But it's true. I mean, it's true.
It was a big day. We didn't even talk about the All-Stars. We'll do that another day. We can save that for the Magic game on Sunday.
Yeah.
Middleton should not have been
around.
Jared Allen should have been in instead of Middleton.
I agree.
Shots fired.
LaMelo missing too. Actually, if I had to pick, I'm putting in LaMelo as the KD replacement. And I think that's what Silver should do too.
He'll make it next year. He'll be all right.
No one wants to see a big man run up and down the floor. They want to see crazy passes, the threes. How do you have an all-star game without LaMelo? He was made for the all-star game.
Yeah,
Bobby, it's people like you. It's people like you why Yao Ming didn't like it here, man. People like you, man. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just joking.
Celtics win 102-93. They are down to Orlando, where it's a 6:00 tip on Sunday, a little earlier. So we'll be on around 8:30 on Sunday night. Join us then. No football, so we are your main viewing attraction unless you're the Pro Bowl fan.
Celtics first Magic. Everyone's watching that. Let's go.
Yep, and then we are on to New York, Brooklyn. Speaking of the Nets, speaking of Harden, the Celtics have a big meeting with them on Tuesday. So that'll be a measuring stick game, I'd imagine, for the Celtics after this recent streak, and another easy win, I would say, on Sunday. So for Sherrod Blakely down in Detroit.
I hate when Bobby does that. I hate when Bobby says
easy wins. Tonight?
The Bobby jinx. Let's see what happens.
I am guaranteeing a Celtics win on Sunday. We'll see where that brings me.
If Terrence Ross drops 30, you know why.
If the Celtics lose to the Magic, they are in some problems, even after this recent winning streak here.
You'll get the version of Bobby where he's going to want the whole team traded. That's going to be fun.
Check out Sherrod, Full Court Press on Bulletin. I believe we have a banner here for that. Yes, we do. He is in Detroit, so I'm sure you'll be getting something out of his experience there, as well as the Bleacher Report article that he teased. So stay tuned for that at Sherrod Blakely, Josue Pavon, Heavy.com, Cedric Maxwell podcast, and the Causeway Street podcast. And Dome Theory, we'll have something new coming over the weekend. I have a couple different ideas in my head, so stay tuned for that. And, of course, CLNSmedia.com, where I'll be writing up this game and all the others through the rest of the year. Trade ideas to come. We are 6 days away from the trade deadline, so be ready for that as well.
Go.
Just 2 more games, I believe, before the deadline. Just that Magic game and the Nets one on Tuesday. And then do they play on the deadline? That's always an awkward thing when that happens. They do not. Next one will be Friday, so a couple of days off next week amid the deadline. So I'm Bobby Manning, Celtics Postgame Show. Thanks for following. Subscribe, Celtics All Access, CLNS Media, and we will